Welcome to the lunchbox, the '08 digital lunchbox. That is. I already had my lunch. You guys want to know what I had?
Yeah.
I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Can any of you remember the last time you had one of those?
Yesterday?
Oh, really?
Yesterday?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm all about PB&J.
Yeah, I haven't had one in a long time. I had one today, and it was like going back in time. So, highly recommend it.
Are you one of these people like cuts the crust off or anything like that?
No, I just make it quick. I don't even slice it. I just 5-minute lunch, just running. But anyways, we're here to talk about today's topic, which is CRO in the time of COVID. And we've discussed CRO in the past with our group, and today is going to be a little different twist on that topic. So maybe you'd like to start us off. Can someone maybe just give us a little intro to CRO for the ones that are maybe new to the concept?
Sure.
Maybe Seth, if you want to do that.
Conversion optimization, conversion rate optimization. It can be really one of the most powerful tools in your marketing arsenal if you have a proper amount of traffic. Of course, optimizing conversions with 5 visitors per week is not ideal, but this is for marketing teams that already have a decent amount of traffic. And there are certain things like messaging, layout, copy, images, all of these visual hierarchy, all of these little components that can really make or break someone, whether someone clicks on that button or contacts you or downloads your product, or even, little micro conversions, we call them, just viewing this important page, viewing the offer that you have that you're targeting, all these things. It's a complex story, but basically there's a way to test user actions by, changing some of these and running an experiment where some of the users see this version and some of the users see that version or multiple versions. So that's my long-winded explanation. Hopefully that made sense. Anything to add? Anyone else?
Yeah, I think for me, this is all about just reducing that cost for acquisition.
Yeah.
A lot of us already have, like Seth said, that traffic coming to our site, whether that's through organic search or you're already doing paid efforts. And this is just a way to really, instead of focusing on what we call the vanity metrics of page views or click-through rates, those are all great, to an extent, but really what matters is the things that drive value for your business. And that's where CRO comes in, really helping to reduce the cost per acquisition there, whether that's a product purchased for e-commerce or a lead generated for like a B2B scenario, to really help just make a bigger impact on your bottom line with your marketing dollars. And now's a great time to be doing that.
Absolutely.
It is a great time to be doing that, but we're also in kind of a weird time, right, guys? I mean, we're all at home. There's this pandemic going on. Would you guys all agree that consumer behavior or any kind of like customer behavior is changing right now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in ways that we haven't seen it in the past. And that's where I think this kind of stuff really comes into play. And really being able to shift your internal team's perspective to say, okay, like we are really, and I know this sounds cliche by this point, but we're really in unprecedented times. Stuff that has worked in the past or even that worked last week, because things are changing so quickly, it may not work next week. And so really just
Right.
getting in the habit of like being open to experimentation, letting something, putting out a small experiment and being okay with that potentially failing and just pivoting and moving on.
And nobody likes the idea that, I'm going to try something and it's going to fail, but a lot of these experiments are going to fail, and then you learn as much from the failures, sometimes more than you do from the successes. So what it can also do is by being mindful of what you're testing, it can also help you, keep you from making a decision that might lead to negative consequences down the road. Like you think, oh, so-and-so is an easy change. I'll just make this. I mean, everybody does this, or this would be the right thing. That, you know, that call to action should be more active, or that button should be a brighter color, or whatever it is that you think that you're modifying for your test. It can sometimes be something really trivial, and then you can see a drop off in your conversions. And if you're not testing for that, then you may be scratching your head saying, well, what's going on here? And it's true, the drop off may have nothing to do with what you actually did to your page, but by gathering data and testing and saying it happened on A, but it didn't happen on B, then you can begin to make some, you know, you have some data to say this would or wouldn't be a good idea to do permanently. So being in that mindset that we're just testing this stuff here, we're trying this for 2, 3, 4 weeks in order to gather some data, and we're not therefore whipsawing our website or ad content or whatever into all of these different gyrations. We're planfully going about trying to understand whether this call to action versus that call to action gets us better results.
Yeah, and you know, there's the level of the really technical stuff, but you get up a level and you're, you know, what comes out of this is that you're learning about your customers right now, right, through this tech, and you're saying, oh, maybe we should tell them about this, and maybe they don't care about this, but at least you have the data, you know, outside of asking them, which is generally not realistic at such a large scale, at least right now. You're learning about them and their preferences, and those preferences are changing too as okay, the economy is opening up tomorrow for certain sectors in certain states. You know, they're different than they were when it was shelter in place, and you know, some testing initiative comes out that probably changes something too. You know, it's all shifting really quickly. So again, like Tyler's saying, do the experiments, be agile, but also remember that you're learning about folks. And also, you know, the kinds of tests that you're running, you know, you don't maybe have time for a 5 weeks long A/B test, but, you know, these multi-arm bandit tests, for example, where you're getting results, you know, as the test prioritizes results versus just exploration, you know, that can be a good thing too to think about.
Yeah, I think Seth, didn't this theme come up last week in one of our conversations as well? You know, I think we've all largely relied on industry research and reports, you know, these big lengthy things that give us all kinds of insights into our consumers. But the problem is right now, like you said, that's changing so quickly that we can't really wait for those kinds of reports to come out, because by the time it's published, you know, often the consumer sentiment has shifted, and that messaging probably isn't going to resonate well with them. So this is really kind of a massive change in who's doing, you know, that research. It's going from us relying on these big juggernauts to really like homegrown grassroots. Okay, let's figure out what works, all the way from messaging through down to, you know, what is the CTA here that should be, you know, that we should be using moving forward. That's a really interesting shift, I think, that we've seen over the last few weeks.
Yeah. So how about in relation to messaging and like content and communication? I mean, what kind of things should we consider in that realm? I mean, I think we need to be empathetic in our tone and messaging. I mean, is there any other considerations there when thinking about messaging?
Yeah, you know, one of the core principles in conversion optimization is thinking in the head of the consumer. What is going to happen when I click on this or submit this form, like subconsciously or consciously? Most of it's subconscious, but what's going to happen when I click on order this delivery? Is it going to be clean? Is it going to be safe? You know, and through that journey, is this company actually doing good in the world right now? You know, once I choose to allocate my dollars towards this company, are they doing decent things in the world? You know, that kind of foresight and messaging is really important to consider. And you know, CRO folks can help you think through some of these things. Of course, there's the data that we're looking at, but you know, things are moving so fast that even a multi-arm bandit test, for example, you just might not have time for that. So we use her kind of like heuristic analyses, best
Mhm.
practices to just make some smart decisions about, okay, we don't need to test that it's probably smart to say that if you click this order button, your product will be handled by people with gloves, or reducing the anxiety in a given user journey or a transaction.
I think something that we talked about from the messaging perspective last week was just consistency across the different platforms. If you haven't checked out that video, I definitely would recommend you do that. I won't get into that now, but I think, looking to the immediacy of like what's going to happen with this button click, this is an opportunity for us to really be incentivizing customers in ways that maybe we haven't been super comfortable with in the past. Even to a point where like reducing our profit on things just to maintain cash flow is becoming more and more important. And so the language and the framing around that, both in the calls to action, but then also in the supplemental content that you're presenting the user on the landing page, or even at the acquisition source with the ad or the social post, making sure that that type of incentivizing language is carrying through across there, and that's resonating in a way that is empathetic, and is kind of tying back into that idea of like, and I'm not recommending that you say this, but we're all in this together, like showing, like Seth, you were saying, we're trying to do a good thing here by passing along savings to you right now. This can be a win-win opportunity for both you and the consumer in this scenario. Think about how you can align that messaging across there to help improve the conversion rates on some of your current experiences.
An awful lot of this really does come down to simply trust and confidence. It is the messaging, is the imagery on the landing page or in the ad or in whatever promotion you're doing. Is it conveying all that? Is the process conveying the sense that everything that happens as you move through the funnel is expected? You can more or less predict what the next thing is going to be. Oh, I'm seeing this ad here and I'm clicking on it and it has this image. When I get to the landing page, there is either the same image or a version of that image which has the scent of the ad, as they say, and then that conveys to me that, yep, I'm in the right place. This is where I intended to go. Here I am. I read the messaging, and as I pull through that, at each step, I don't feel as though I can have the confidence that I'm not suddenly going to be billed without having a chance to look it over, make a final decision or review. I mean, just think about even just going back to the early days of e-commerce and how scary it was for people to make purchases online. Is it okay? Is it safe? Is it secure? Is my credit card going to be, my information going to be lifted? Can I trust the vendor? And now people just routinely sail through e-commerce transactions and click buttons like this, no big deal. I'm going to order something, or I'm ordering shoes, I'm ordering, a coat or hopefully for the summer, sandals or whatever. So, and you hardly give it a second thought, but you do want, everybody's had that experience at some point of you click the button and you're like, oh, wait a second, they didn't tell me anything about shipping. What, the
Right.
shipping is going to be like $30? No, eject. And so that idea of, as you're thinking about how a page is going to convert or how a process is going to convert, making sure that people are all along every step of the way and that you're not surprising them, pulling the rug out for them, that what they saw in the previous state is confirmed when they get to the next state. And again, all of that does require, testing throughout.
Yeah, and I think it's important to think, okay, we tend to focus on, trying to talk about the pandemic and whatnot, but hey, consumers might be more skittish right now, and many are, right? So it's not about making sure your messaging aligns with we're all in this together, we keep our things clean. Like Andy's saying, if people, a decent segment are just really skittish right now, so that extra attention to detail, matching the scent to the landing page, all that kind of stuff is just even more important right now.
Yeah, and just knowing the facts about their industry and what they're going through right now. especially healthcare, great example, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So from what I'm hearing, you know, typically we like to operate following like best practices, but it sounds like right now there's no such thing as best practices. It goes back to that idea of experimentation, right, guys?
Well, there are best practices in the sense that there are things that we all believe or that are generally believed to be effective. The problem is that they don't always work. They're not necessarily guaranteed to work for your website or your campaign or your situation. So even though it's a paradox, even though we can say, yeah, best practices, everybody knows this. And this is why we have design patterns, for example, in web design. There's just established patterns that everybody has settled into and understand work. That said, at any given point, well, we can make some broad assumptions about what is and isn't good user design, what's good UX. There's no hard and fast rule that this is going to work all the time for your audience, for your product, for your transaction, for your value proposition. So this is where you can say yes as a general rule, but still test and verify that this is actually working, or that maybe I can come up with a better version of this for my audience that's more in tune with their expectations.
Yeah, I think the normal playbooks here, you know, those core UI best practices, absolutely, those still apply. But for me, the idea of kind of the best practices being out the window is more around the messaging. You know, you think about the seasonality. There's a really good predictability, especially in the e-commerce realm. You know, you've got the holiday messaging, the spring fresh, you know, and right now, like, people are so all over the place, you know, on a day-to-day or even an hour-to-hour basis, depending on, you know, some of the news reports that are coming out. I think that kind of throws that idea of, well, just follow the best practice and the seasonality. No, you can't be talking about spring messages here. You're going to totally miss the mark, and that's not going to sound empathetic to users. Like, to an extent, sure, but test some of that. Get in, really ask yourself, like, what is my customer needing right now? And the hard part is we're not really sure. So if you've got some ideas, throw them out into some tests. Again, see what resonates, and you know, as that starts to take shape and become clear, shift the messaging to match that.
I mean, in some ways, this is a good time for people to be thinking about this, because a lot of the business as usual practices, they may not be operative right now, and you're looking at other ways that you could potentially, if not outright operate, at least learn and get ready for the next phase of operation. So adopting a testing mindset in the organization, canvassing people, particularly talking to people in sales and service who are really close to your customers and clients, and can be essentially a proxy focus group for the client mindset, and come to the internal voice of the client, and soliciting ideas from those folks, and having them review pages or review content, or review campaign content or copies critically, and make suggestions. Is a good way to go, because people, they're going to be the closest to, yeah, I can feel the change. I you know, just in my interactions with people, this is what's top of mind right now. And if we can reflect that or resonate with that, then we might have, you know, we might be able to engender more of that confidence and trust we're looking to.
And I think what I'm starting to see, and Seth, I think maybe you got on this train a little bit earlier than I did, but it's that idea of like coronavirus fatigue. You know, people are looking for what's next. I think that's really evident, especially in the increasing conversation at the state level around how states and the focus of how states are going to reopen. People want to know, like, when are we going to get back to normal? What is normal going to look like? And in the absence of clear answers there, I think, you know, again, that just makes it more important for us to be testing the messaging, thinking about, you know, the idea of like that mood boosting content at this point in time is really going to be beneficial, in that you might be able to, you know, find some clever ways to tie that into spring, you know, in a way that's still going to be empathetic to the current situation. So now's a great time to be taking a look at the messaging on your landing pages and at your acquisition sources to see how are we aligning this? How can we better align this with this shifting mood?
So you're talking about being proactive, right, Tyler, during this time?
Yeah, absolutely.
What about like identifying, what if we got into the weeds here a little bit? How can we identify usability issues in particular on a site? Like what are some of the things we do at 08 to do that?
Lots of tools, lots of, of course there's our heuristic analysis, which we can look at from a high level. Okay, that's probably a bad UX, but we can verify these things through some, like Fungui is a UX testing tool that we use to track human vision, basically how people's attention is drawn or not drawn to certain aspects of the web page or a design. There's Hotjar where we can see people, navigating with clicks and mouse movement, basically watch movies of people trying to use the website or whatever it is, heat maps, click maps, all these things. What else are we missing, guys?
I think right now the tool that is my favorite is that Fungui. We're using that with a couple of clients right now to, like, we have hypotheses on how we can modify these pages. And Hotjar and Google Analytics are great to show us how users are interacting with the page in its current form. But this kind of gives us a picture into how a user might interact with the page in a theoretical future state, which is super awesome from my perspective. And so that allows us to get in and just like manipulate an existing landing page within the DOM of the page, take a screenshot of that, shift that into this tool, and that gives us a whole bunch of data around how the user is going to interact with that. Especially, you can set up these different zones, and it'll show you how much time and attention the user is going to give to that, using its AI algorithms and things. So that is a really great way to validate down and dirty, either we're on the right path here, and now that we've got a more streamlined vision, we've affirmed that we do think that this is going to work. We've got some data behind it. Let's actually now spend the time to set up the test in Google Optimize or, Crazy Egg, whatever you're using for your A/B testing, to then actually get actual user data on top of that. So it prevents us from kind of going down some paths that we know might fail with a strong likelihood before we invest too much time in those.
Well, excellent. We're starting to get to our half hour here, guys. Is there any other final thoughts? Any other things we want to sneak into our lunchbox here today?
Like anything complex or that requires more brain power or where additional brain power is useful, just talking to folks like us can definitely be beneficial, especially during these times, kind of repeating this message, but we should all try to be helping each other out. So, if it's not a sale or not a consultation or anything like that, fine, just, talk to folks like us and get a fresh perspective, or hire a freelancer, that has domain specific expertise that you're lacking. If it's not an agency like us, fine, but now's the time to brainstorm, to get additional perspectives, and CRO is, it's a little difficult for people to understand or to fully grasp the sheer impact it can have on an organization, especially during times like this. So if you can at least explore it, please do. That's what I would say. What else, folks? What are we missing? Anything else?
Yeah, just to add on that availability. I mean, we're here, like, we're doing this thing. We do this every Tuesday and Friday. We're here at lunch to hang out and talk about these things. I mean, the chat is open for questions, but we're also available before and after these sessions. We even have marketing support groups that you could be a part of if you want to talk more with peers and not talk to agency people. Lots of opportunities to learn Lots of great content out there. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Good stuff.
it's good stuff. We got a few more minutes left. I mean, we're here to hang out.
Hard stop
We,
at
we,
5.
we covered most of our topics though.
Yeah.
Unless Andy, if you want to get really into like data right now, anything you know, you want to touch on there. Is data now important than ever? I mean, looking at behavior.
Data's never not been important. You know,
Right.
there's the old saw that you know, opinion versus opinion, the highest paid opinion is going to win, and opinion versus data wins, hopefully, and data versus data, the best data wins. So we want the best data possible. And so, and there's a lot of ways to get this. Talked about Hotjar. I think that's in some ways one of the easier platforms for people to get on and experiment with if you want to see how some of this stuff works. The only technical barrier, which may not even be a barrier depending on how your website is set up or your analytics is set up, is that you have to place a small snippet of code on every page of your website, essentially in the header, which can be done manually or it can be done through a tool like Google Tag Manager. And if you don't have Google Tag Manager, that's something you should really be looking at because it greatly simplifies being able to put marketing tags in. It's something we pretty much do as practically a foundational step with every client we work with. Once you have Hotjar in place, then you can pick pages and you can do snapshots of them and you can see, you know, how far down are people scrolling? What are they clicking on? What kind of mouse movement am I seeing on this page? And it's eye-opening to some degree to get 1,000 snapshots collectively of a page and to see the heat maps forming. So that's one thing that you can do. The screen recordings are also quite interesting. They can be time consuming to watch. There are things that you can do in Hotjar to speed those up. And Crazy Egg has something similar. I'm not just saying that it's got to be Hotjar, but Hotjar has a free account that you can do which basically gives you 3 snapshots and 300 screen recordings. And for a lot of people, that's probably more data than any individual wants to deal with. You know, if you have a team of people working on UX, that's just a starting point. But for a lot of people, it would be, you could get some good insights out of that. We have a client right now that's got essentially a complex search going on where they're doing some filtering in a sidebar widget, and we're using Hotjar to figure out where people are clicking on that, which options within that sidebar are they using, which ones are they ignoring, do they really need to fill out are they going to know that SKU and fill out that field, or can we eliminate that sort of thing. So just in terms of, I'm always a big fan of, if you're not going to destroy something and you have a little bit of extra bandwidth and you've got even a slight amount of motivation to get out of your comfort zone a little bit, read about CRO, read about some of the stuff, and then pick a tool. And it almost doesn't matter which one, but pick something that's fairly easy and visual and can give you some feedback and start to get a sense for how to work with that data and interpret it. There's a lot of statistics involved in some of this stuff, but Hotjar is one of those tools that I like because it's heat maps, and everybody gets heat maps. You know, red's better, blue is cold, you know, hot and cold, and, you know, bursts of activity with clicks. It's very visual, it's very easy to understand, and it bypasses a lot of the complexity of having to understand statistical analysis formulas. And most of us were assuming there would be no math.
So Andy, back to Tag Manager for a second. I mean, I know almost every website already has like Google Analytics, you know, set up, but like I still come across people that don't have Google Tag Manager installed. And one, it's a free tool, right?
Yeah, it's completely
right. It's free. And if you don't have that, I mean, you're kind of missing out on valuable data that you're collecting from your site, right? Oh, I think we're signing off. Sorry.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, had to go.
Yeah, get Tag Manager. It's Google wants you to have it. They're giving it to you for free. It's as easy to put in place as Google Analytics was. And once you have it in place, Google Analytics you put Google Analytics in through Tag Manager, but then it opens the door for everything else. So that's great.
Well, maybe we'll do a lunchbox just on that sometime.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
That could be a
no, I think
topic.
people need to know about it. There's so many people that are not familiar with the Google ecosystem and the different things you need in order to like get that valuable data. And once you have that valuable data, you can do, you know, better marketing from that. So anyways, you guys, we're right at 12:30. I want to thank you for joining. I want to thank all the viewers who attended today, and see you on Friday.